Hi guys, how are you today? ¿Cómo están chicos? Hi. No sé si ahí me pueden escuchar. Tengo audio
Sí,
tal vez.
teacher, buenas tardes.
¿Cómo les va chicos? Buenas tardes. We're gonna start. Okay, today I'm gonna write down the agenda for today. Today is April the 8th, 2024. The agenda for today, so we're gonna start.
Licenciada, buenas tardes. César le saluda.
Hi, ¿cómo le va César? How are you today?
¿Cómo está?
Agenda.
No voy a
General.
estar atento en la clase ya que estoy en el trabajo, pero sí voy a estar escuchando.
Okay, no problem. General guidelines,
Ya,
and we're
perfecto.
gonna start with homework. Les voy a explicar el deber 1. Homework. Y vamos a empezar con la gramática. So as you can see here, we have 53 students in the class. 53 students. Remember, if you don't have time to join for the tutoring, you have to check the recording, okay? Si no puede conectarse los días lunes, que vamos a tener la explicación de la gramática, y los viernes del foro con el video, puede ver las grabaciones. ¿En dónde puede ver usted la grabación? Como ya está en sexto nivel, se ve a la pantalla de inicio. Clases grabadas. Y aquí puede encontrar la grabación de la clase, ¿sí? Del día de hoy. En este caso, el día de hoy ya se cargaría la grabación para que las otras personas puedan acceder a la tutoría del día de hoy. ¿Alguien tenía algo que decirme? ¿Alguna pregunta antes de empezar? Creo que quería hablar. Okay. I send you an assignment, I mean an announcement. Yo les envié un anuncio el día de hoy, ¿sí? Poniendo con su conocimiento las notas. Ya, the grades. Here we have 5 grades. Tenemos 5 notas. The first grade is the forum, 1 point. Homework 1, 2 points. Evaluations 1 and 2, 1 point. Homework 2, final project, 2 points. And the final exam, 4 points. Yeah. In order to approve this module, you must get 7 out of 10. Sí, debe tener la nota mínima de 7. Si tiene 6 a 6.99, tiene que rendir un examen de mejora. You have to take the makeup exam. And then you have to pay $5. ¿Ok? Tiene que pagar $5 si en este caso usted no llegara a tener los 7 puntos. ¿Sí? También me voy a permitir leer la primer anuncio que les mandé el día de hoy. Sí, dice buenos días, estimados estudiantes. Primeramente les deseo un gran inicio de nivel inglés. Espero que se encuentren bien. Les recuerdo que hoy martes 8 de abril empezamos nuestras clases online vía Teams de 4 a 6 de la tarde. El link de Teams lo podrán encontrar en la sesión 1. Será el mismo link de acceso para todas las clases. Quienes no puedan asistir a las clases online deberán revisar los videos de las clases grabadas, tal como les expliqué ahorita. Cada semana para que puedan revisar lo que hemos hecho en clase. Deberían ir a la página de inicio, clases grabadas de cada día martes. Como ya les mencioné, los días martes tendremos clases online, tutoría en Teams, en horario de 4 a 6 de la tarde. Y los días viernes nos conectaremos en Canvas desde las 6 hasta las 8 de la noche, ¿sí? Se va a conectar. Para completar en ese rango de las 2 horas, va a completar el foro participativo, ¿ya? El mismo que deberá, el mismo que deberán ver una clase pregrabada sobre el vocabulario de la semana que la podrán revisar también en el material de estudio. ¿Ok? Por mi parte, estaré revisando los foros que realice el día viernes de 6 a 8, les voy a revisar. Ustedes ingresan. Nos conectamos, doy un poquito de explicación del vocabulario, realizan el foro y ese rato les voy a dando el feedback. Si usted tiene alguna pregunta sobre la tarea o algo, yo les ayudo en ese día, el día viernes de 6 a 8. Recuerden ingresar desde su laptop o computador durante la clase, ya que se realizarán actividades de las cuales ustedes deberán participar activamente, ¿sí? Su participación en clase es muy importante. En lo posible deberán encender las cámaras, si es posible, ¿no? A menos que presenten fallas en su conexión de internet. Las actividades ya se activarán desde el día de hoy, están activadas. La tarea 1, la evaluación 1 y el foro obviamente el día viernes, ¿ya? So, como aquí les había dicho, chicos, aquí en esta parte de assignments, la tarea 1 ya está asignada. Está hasta el 20 de abril. Sí, de repente aquí tienen alguna pregunta, alguna duda sobre la tarea 1 y que ya les voy a explicar después de qué se trata.
No, teacher.
Ok, como les iba comentando, esta tarea les voy a explicar al final de la clase para que puedan realizar. Entonces, para que podamos realizar esta actividad, necesitamos ya tener la gramática. ¿Ok? Déjenme ver. Me deja un ratito para poder empezar. I'm gonna share the video. Les voy a compartir un video. Me avisas que pueden escuchar, chicos. ¿Sí podemos escuchar?
Sí,
Yes.
teacher.
Thank
Yes,
you.
teacher.
Obligations and rules.
Welcome to Jennifer Company, John. Do you have any questions?
Yes, what time do I have to start work?
You have to start work at 8 a.m.
What do I have to do?
You have to type letters, translate French and answer the telephone.
Do I have to wear a uniform?
No, you don't have to wear a uniform, but some people like to dress more formally.
Can I smoke?
No, you mustn't smoke in the building. You'll have to go outside if you want to smoke. You're allowed to smoke in here.
I must stop smoking. It's really bad for my health.
I think you should.
Strong obligation.
Need to, must and have to are all used to express strong obligation.
My tooth is sore. I must go to the dentist. You don't need to go shopping as I've already gone.
Although this is the guiding rule, there are so many exceptions to it that it is a weak rule. Compare these examples.
You must not bring food into the class. You don't have to bring food into the class.
Prohibits bringing food into class. It is not necessary for you to bring food in, but you may.
Don't you know that you must stop when the traffic lights are red?
Sorry, sir. I was so absent-minded that I didn't pay attention to the traffic lights.
Well, sir, you'll have to pay a fine.
In speaking, have got to is more common than have to when talking about obligation. Let's clean this kitchen up.
We've just got to try to clean it a bit more.
Yes, at least once a week, it needs a good clean.
No obligation.
Don't have to means you don't need to do something, but it's fine if you want to do it.
You don't have to go to the bank to do a transfer. You can do it online.
You don't have to come with me, honestly. I'll be fine.
Mustn't means it's not allowed, or it's a bad idea.
You mustn't eat so much chocolate, you'll be sick.
Weak obligation.
Weak obligations may come from tradition, custom or culture and may be seen as advice. Should and ought to are the most common verbs used.
Our friend is unwell. We should visit him.
It is a nice thing to do.
You ought to prepare your bags the night before your flight.
It is a good idea.
Obligation in past.
Obligation in past in much more simple, use only needed to or had to. Had to is most common.
I had to work extra hours to pay my bills.
I didn't need to buy any books. They were all in the library.
Obligation in the future.
I'll have to borrow money.
Hi Jennifer Banks. You are to leave this place at once, and you are to travel by train to Paris. In Paris you are to pick up your ticket from Mr. Jason Bourne, and you are to fly to your destination alone. When you arrive, you are to meet our agent, Mr. John Wick, who will give you further information. You are to destroy this message now. Thank you.
Want to speak real English from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at EnglishClass101.com.
Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the differences between must, have to, and should. I'm also going to talk quickly about the negative forms. I'm going to focus on comparing the very similar meanings of these words. So let's get started. First, let's talk about must. Must. In the negative, we say must not. So must or must not. In British English, you may hear mustn't, mustn't, but we don't really use this in American English. We usually use must not when we want to use this pattern. So we use must and must not first for official rules. Official rules means, for example, rules at a company or rules at a school, rules at the airport, police, so law-related rules, like things that are related to your society. So official rules. We use must and must not to explain these rules. For example, passengers must show passports at immigration. Passengers must show passports at immigration. This shows it's an official rule. All passengers must show. They have a responsibility. It's the rule. Must expresses this. It's a formal rule-like statement. Must not then. Visitors must not wear shoes inside. Visitors must not wear shoes inside. So that means visitors must take their shoes off before coming inside. So must not wear shoes inside means not allowed. It is prohibited. You may not. It's not allowed. So may not means it's like less formal than must not. Must not is much stronger. I'm not going to cover may in this one. So must not is more formal. It sounds more rule-like, official rule-like. The second use of must and must not is for strong personal advice. Strong is the key here. I'm going to talk more about personal advice later in this lesson, but when you want to express strong personal advice, you can use must or must not. For example, like visiting a doctor's office, or maybe some other kind of health-related issue, or something that's very important to someone's life. You can use must and must not to express advice in those situations. For example, you must stop smoking. You must stop smoking. So this might be advice, strong personal advice for a very heavy smoker, someone who smokes a lot. You must stop smoking or you'll die, or you must stop smoking or you're going to get much more sick, for example. Another one, you must not forget to take this medicine. You must not forget to take this medicine. So that means you have a responsibility. It's very important to take this medicine. You must not forget to take this medicine. So we use this for strong personal advice. So strong is an important key word here. We don't use must for like everyday general advice. I will talk about that later. So official rules, strong personal advice. This is how we use must and must not. Let's continue to the second point for this lesson, which is have to. In the negative, don't have to. For different subjects, doesn't have to in the negative, and in the positive, has to. The same rules will apply to need to as well. Need to. Also have got to in British English. So let's look at how we use this. We use have to and the negative don't have to talk about responsibilities. Responsibilities. So this can mean school responsibilities, work responsibilities, like relationship responsibilities, family responsibilities, the things that we have some kind of obligation to do. So in many cases, we don't want to do these things, but there's some need. There's some responsibility. For example, I have to go to work. I have to go to work. Have to shows it's a responsibility. I have to go to work. She has to leave early. She has to leave early. She has a responsibility to leave early. She has to. So as I said, when she or he or it is the subject, we conjugate the verb. We change the verb from have to has. She has to leave early. These show a responsibility of some kind. So many learners ask, like, can I use must here? I must go to work. She must leave early. It's not grammatically incorrect to say must. I must go to work. But because we use must for official rules and for like strong personal advice, it sounds kind of strange to use must here. Like, I have to go to work. That's an everyday, regular responsibility. When we make like a sentence like, I must go to work, it sounds like there's a very like strong reason, or there's a very official reason, I must go. So you might hear that in movies, like in epic, big scale, like fantasy stories. There's someone fighting a war, for example, or there's someone with a really big responsibility. They might say, I must go. In those cases, and when they're using like an old style of English, fine. But in everyday English, using I must before some of like your responsibilities sounds pretty strange. So I don't recommend it in most cases. If you want to sound funny, you can say something like, I must go to work. But in most cases, I would not recommend it. I have to go to work sounds much more natural. Or she must go, or she must leave early. It sounds way too formal. So please use has to or have to talk about your everyday responsibilities. Now, let's look at negatives. Negatives. So again, don't have to is like the I subject version. I don't have to, we don't have to, they don't have to. If your subject is he, she, or it, it becomes doesn't have to. He doesn't have to, she doesn't have to. So examples, he doesn't have to come. He doesn't have to come. This means he has no responsibility to come. It's okay. He doesn't have to come. No responsibility. He can, but he doesn't have to. That's what this communicates. He doesn't have to come. Same thing here. We don't have to leave yet. So yet shows it's okay now. We don't have to leave yet. Maybe later. We don't have to leave yet. Again, we can, but we don't have to. There's no responsibility there. So an important point about the negative with have to or need to is that when you make a negative with this pattern, make sure you're talking about a common or a regular responsibility. We use these patterns, we use this have to, this negative have to pattern for things that we can reasonably be expected to have a responsibility to do. So an example I have heard from students, from learners, is something like this. I don't have to drink alcohol at work. I don't have to drink alcohol at work. So for grammar, this sentence is correct. The sentence is grammatically perfect. There's no communication problem. It's a great sentence. But this sounds strange because for most people, drinking alcohol at work is not a regular responsibility. I mean, unless you're like a bartender or you're someone who works with alcohol, like a wine sommelier, whatever. But for most people, in this example, drinking alcohol at work is not a regular responsibility. So it sounds a little strange to say, I don't have to drink alcohol at work. We often regularly use have to in the negative, I don't have to talk about our everyday responsibilities. So like, I don't have to get up early on the weekends. It means I have no responsibility to do that on the weekends. Or if you have a holiday, I don't have to go to work today. That's a much more common way of using don't have to. So please keep this point in mind. Make sure you're expressing a regular, like a reasonable expectation when you use the negative form here. Okay, so with that in mind, let's continue to the last point for this lesson. The last point is about should. Should. In the negative, it's should not, and we reduce should not to shouldn't. Shouldn't. Should, should not, and shouldn't. We use should and should not for general advice. General advice. This means everyday, just regular life advice. So compare this to must and must not, which we use for very strong personal advice. In most cases, in everyday life, we use should to talk about general advice, a suggestion, a recommendation. We use should to talk about that. We do not use must to talk about that, unless for some reason it's very, very strong. Examples. You should go home. You should go home. Maybe you look sick. You should go home. Or he should take a day off. He should take a day off. Maybe he looks stressed. So using must in these cases would sound strange because these are kind of everyday small suggestions like you must go home. That sounds very serious. Or he must take a day off. Again, sounds very serious. Why? Did something happen? So use should in these cases. Also, using have to in these cases kind of sounds a little strange too. If I use have to here, you have to go home. You have to go home. It's like, why? Do I have a responsibility to go home? It's kind of strange. Same thing here. He has to take a day off. Why? Like maybe there's some company rule. He has to take a day off. I don't know. But be careful. Make sure if you're giving just advice, your opinion, just use should. Of course, there are some cases where you can use have to in place of should to make a stronger recommendation. This is useful when you're giving like a restaurant recommendation. And it sounds like this. You have to try this restaurant. So that sounds more like excited than you should. You should try this restaurant, and you have to try this restaurant. Have to sounds stronger because it's like you're saying you have a responsibility to try this restaurant. You have to try this restaurant, or you have to try this recipe. It sounds a little stronger than you should. So you can use it in that way. But if you're giving advice, like based on something you can see, or if you're trying to give someone like career advice maybe, be careful with your use of should and have to. So have to shows like you're putting responsibility on that person. So should is more like general advice. Okay, let's look then at using shouldn't. So as I said, should not reduces to shouldn't. We shouldn't talk so loudly. We shouldn't talk so loudly. So in this case, we shouldn't. That's like advice for our group. Maybe we're talking very loudly and one person says, oh no, we shouldn't talk so loudly. So that's giving advice to the group. We should talk more quietly. So we shouldn't talk so loudly. Another one. She shouldn't worry so much. She shouldn't worry so much. So it's general advice. Don't worry so much is another way to say that. She shouldn't worry so much. So again, using something like must not sounds way too serious here. Like, we must not talk so loudly. It's for strong personal advice, so using must here sounds very strange. Same thing here. She must not worry so much. Again, very strange because this is a very strong sounding expression. She must not worry so much. Similarly, using have to here, we don't have to talk so loudly. That expresses lack of responsibility. We don't have to talk so loudly, but we can, is kind of the idea there. So this doesn't sound natural. Same here. She doesn't have to worry so much. This could be used, perhaps, she doesn't have to worry so much. Like, you could say in, for example, a work situation, you have a colleague, a coworker, and she worries a lot. And you want to express to your manager or to your team member, she doesn't have to worry so much. I can do it. Like, in that case, maybe it's natural. But if you're giving general advice, shouldn't sounds much better. So, keep this in mind. Should and should not for your general everyday advice for recommendations. Have to and don't have to for your responsibilities. Must and must not for official rules and for very strong personal advice. So, I hope that this introduction to these three expressions helps you understand the differences and the different feelings and situations in which we use these. So if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some sentences with these, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Of course, if you liked this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Want to speak real English from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at EnglishClass101.com.
Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to describe an object's dimensions. Dimensions means the size of an object, all of the different sizes of an object. I'm going to talk about a few key words that we need to describe these sizes, and I'm going to talk about how we make sentences that use this kind of information. So let's get started. First, I want to begin with this list of keywords for this lesson. So I want everybody to be careful about the grammar of the sentences when they build these sentences. So first, let's look at these words here. These words are all nouns. The words are length, length, width, width, height, height, and depth, depth. So each of these nouns, when we use them to talk about the size of an object, explains some kind of like question. So by that I mean with length, for example. Length tells us how long the object is. So length, you can connect it with the word long. Remember though, this is an adjective. How long is the item? Length is the noun form here. Similarly, width. Width tells us how wide is the object. How wide is the object? So length is how long. Width is how wide the object is. Height tells us how tall the object is. How tall, if that's our question, we're looking for the height of the object. How tall is the object? My height is. That's what we would use to talk about it as a noun. Not tall, which is the adjective form, but height. That's the noun form. Finally, depth. Depth. We use depth to explain how deep an object is. So we might use this more for like things where we need to go under the ground, perhaps. In some cases, it's used for talking about buildings, like how far back something goes. We could also use this to talk about underwater measurements, or maybe like, as you'll see later, like a bathtub measurement, something that goes down. So depth tells us how deep something is. So to review, length is how long something is, width is how wide something is, height is how tall something is, and depth is how deep something is. So when we are talking about these points, we use measurements. So a measurement is the unit that we use to talk about these things. So there are two systems in the world that are used. The US is one of, I believe, only 2 countries that uses what's called the imperial system. In the imperial system, we use inches, which we write in a short way, an abbreviation as IN, inches, and feet, which we abbreviate as FT, feet, FT, inches, IN. So there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So an inch is a small unit, a foot is a larger unit. There are 12 inches inside 1 foot. This is the imperial system. Now, there are larger measurements in the imperial system, yes, but for today's lesson, I'm focusing on measurements of objects, so I'm not going to talk about the larger measurements. Okay, but let's compare this to the metric system, Most of the world uses the metric system. In the United States, the imperial system is used, but most of the rest of the world uses the metric system. For today's lesson, I want to focus on these 3 key vocabulary words. They are millimeters, which we abbreviate, we make short as MM. We have centimeters, which we abbreviate as CM. And finally, we have meters, we abbreviate with M. So for reference, inside 1 meter, there are 100 centimeters, and there are 1,000 millimeters. So 1,000 millimeters, 100 centimeters inside a meter. So if you're interested, you can break down this centi and milli to learn more about the histories of these words. But that's a little bonus point for those of you who are interested. Let's look at how we use this then to describe an object's dimensions, to talk about the size of something with these words too. So I've drawn this object, a box, for this lesson, and I have marked here 20, 40, and 60. So I want to use these numbers to talk about the size of the object. So let's take a look at a very basic way to describe these dimensions. This box is 20 centimeters, in this case, x 40 centimeters, x 60 centimeters. So very commonly in English writing and in writing, I think maybe from other languages too, we see this x between our measurements. In English, we read this as by. So naturally, I would say 20 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 60 centimeters. And if it's understood, if this unit of measurement is understood, we might say just 20 by 40 by 60, or 20 by 40 by 60 centimeters is also okay. we often don't need to say centimeters, centimeters, centimeters after each one because everything should be in the same unit of measurement. So 20 by 40 by 60 is a very clear way to say that. If you're using inches, actually these are the same measurements, just in inches in the imperial system. You might see, for example, a dot in the number followed by a couple more numbers. So these are the same measurements actually, just in the imperial system in inches. So to describe the dimensions of this box, I would say this box is 7.84 inches by 15.74 inches by 23.62 inches. So again, we're using by here. We read this, the dot, as point, point. You'll also notice the number or numbers before the dot are read as regular. By that I mean 7 and 15 and 23. Those are read as regular numbers. The numbers after that are read individually. So 7.84, not 7.84, 7.84. We read it one at a time. Each number is read one at a time. 7.84 inches by 15.74 inches by 23.62 inches. So when you need to read these small numbers after the decimal point, this is called a decimal point here. We just read it as point. Make sure to read these individually, not together. So this is another small point about dimensions. Of course, you may see this in centimeters too, maybe 20.5 centimeters, for example. So this is how we read these portions of the sentence, and also a point about reading the numbers too. So how do we use the word long and length and so on? So there are a couple of different ways to describe this. So as I've said here, this is very common using just the dimensions like this. We can do that. If you want to be very specific about your dimensions, you could say, for example, this box is 20 centimeters long. That means the length of the box. So in this case, maybe this is 20, for example. And also, maybe it's like the difference between width and length is sort of just up to the person who created the object, or maybe it's just for reference purposes. So sometimes there's not like necessarily always a rule for which is width and which is length, but length tends to be longer than width. So for this example, probably 40 we would say is the length and 20 is the width. But for this example sentence, this box is maybe 20 centimeters long. This is how I would use long in a sentence. However, if I want to use length, the noun form I talked about earlier, the length is 20 centimeters. So notice this sentence and this sentence are sharing the same information. The length of the box, that's the information. But the grammar of the sentence changes. This box is 20 centimeters long, adjective here. The length is 20 centimeters, or the length of this box is 20 centimeters. So note, noun form and adjective form, length and long, they require slightly different sentence structures. Let's look with wide and width then. So here, this box is 40 centimeters wide. This is my adjective form. The width is 40 centimeters. This is my noun form. We can do the same thing with tall and height. This box is 60 centimeters tall, or the height is 60 centimeters. So again, tall is my adjective, height is my noun. So depending on the word I use, I need to make sure my grammar, the structure of my sentence, is correct. I cannot say the tall is 60 centimeters. That is incorrect because tall is an adjective. I must use a noun here. I also cannot use height in this pattern. This box is 60 centimeters. Height is incorrect because height is a noun. I have to use an adjective here. It's 60 centimeters tall. This is correct. We use the same pattern when we're talking about people's height. So her height is 160 centimeters, or she is 160 centimeters tall. So please keep this in mind when you're talking about the object dimensions, the sizes of objects. Finally, I mentioned the word deep or the word depth too. So you might use this if you're talking about like your bathtub, for example. My bathtub is 80 centimeters deep. So here, deep, again, this is the adjective form. To use depth, we would make a pattern like this. The depth of my bathtub is 80 centimeters, for example. So this is how we introduce sizes in English. So important points to take away are this by and this point. This will help you sound more natural when you are reading dimensions for things. So when you're taking a measurement of something, you can use this number, 20 centimeters, and then as you're taking the next measurement, it's very common to say by, so 20 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 60 centimeters as you're measuring something. That's a very common way to express that. So I hope that this is helpful for you in terms of the measurements of objects, but if you have any questions or comments, or if there's something you would like to practice, if you want to make an example measurement, for example, in the comment section, please feel free to do that as well. Of course, if there's something else you want to know about this topic, please let us know in the comments too. If you liked this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Want to speak real English from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at EnglishClass101.com.
Hi.
Here we have some school subjects. Todo eso vamos a ver el día viernes. Here we have the morals must. As you can watch it in the 3 videos, must we're gonna use to talk about obligation, strong advice. She must be in bed because she has the flu. Jack must brush his teeth before going to bed. Those sentences express obligation and strong advice. Mustn't. Peter mustn't sleep during the class. You mustn't smoke. This is prohibition. Here we have the rules. I must do the laundry. He must study for the exams. She must come to the party tomorrow. It must sleep in its house. We must eat vegetable every day. You must do sports 4 days a week. Here we have subject, must, and the verb always in the base form. Talking about prohibition using mustn't. We're going to use the subject mustn't and the verb in the base form. Okay. Here we have some examples. Por favor, chicos, vamos a realizar este ejemplo. Les voy a mandar el link para que puedan realizar en su casa. Ok. Sí.
Magíster, una pregunta. ¿Le enviamos la captura?
Disculpen, no sé si solo a mí me pasa o es en general, pero no escucho nada.
Okay, so you must be quiet, right? Number 2. You must not take photos when you are in the museum, right? Number 3. You must not run. This is not allowed. This is a prohibition. You must buy a ticket. You must then take your dog with you. Here we have to. Have to means tener que. Have to and don't have to. Tener que y no tener que. Have to usage expressed in personal obligation. The subject is obliged or forced to act by a separate or external power. For example, when you follow the law, you must use have to. I have to leave early today. You will have to pay for the excess. Don't have to. There is no obligation. You are not required to do something, especially if you don't want to. You don't have to make excuses. You don't have to whisper. No one can hear us. Here we have or has to for positive statements. I have to see my doctor tomorrow. He has to work tomorrow night. She has to clean her house on Sunday. It has to take the medicine every day. We have to do math exercises. You have to make cookies for your children. They have to buy a new TV for the living room. Here we have for negative statements. We need to use the auxiliary. We need to use the auxiliary don't or doesn't. Okay? I don't have to read the same book again. He doesn't. If we have the third person, si tenemos la tercera persona, he, she, it, we need to use the auxiliary does. And the verb in the base part. He doesn't have to come. She doesn't have to cook. He doesn't have to run. Okay. Ya, pues el de lenguaje para hacer. Here we have some examples. She, this is the third person. If we have the third person, we need to use has. Recuerden que siempre es tercera persona, has. She has to practice the piano. He has to wash the dishes. I have to take a shower. Yeah. We have to learn English. Number 5, they have to clean their room. Maria. Maria has to feed the fish. You have to walk the dog. Mark. Mark is the third person, he. So he, we need to use the auxiliary has. He has to study for the exam. Here we have some basic needs of human, animal, and plants. For example, human beings need food, water, air, shelter. Animals need food, water, air, habitat. Plants need water, air, sunlight. So we're gonna use this with the verb need, that means necesita. Humans need to eat healthy food. Animals need to drink water every day. Plants need to receive sunlight in the morning. So here we have the chart for you to follow the rules. If we have the third person, we need to add S to the verb. He needs to rent a car to see the city. She needs to wash her clothes after work. It needs to eat 3 times a day. Here we have the negative state. Don't and doesn't. He doesn't need to design. She doesn't need to bake. It doesn't need to play. So job requirements. Social workers need to listen to their clients for as long as they need. Number 2, flight attendants needs to make sure that passengers have all they need, right? When they are in a flight. Number 3, reporters need to interview different people. Firefighters need to save people from dangers. Okay, guys. As I told you before, I'm gonna show how can you make the homework number 1. So here we have the assignments. Homework session 1. In English and Spanish. Record a video talking about the degree that you are currently studying and if you wanted to study a different degree before. Here we have the link of the instruction of the homework. Link del ejemplo de la tarea. También tengo otro link donde ustedes pueden observar cómo un estudiante ha realizado la tarea. Pueden seguir ese modelo y realizar la actividad. Aquí está.
Hi, teacher Maria Jose. My name is
Wilfredo
Garcia.
Garcia.
I
I
study
study
at
at
Indominica
Indominica
University.
University.
I
I
like
like
being
being
a
a
teacher
teacher
because
because
I
I
can
can
share
share
my
my
knowledge
knowledge
with
with
many
many
children.
children.
A
A
teacher
teacher
must
must
have
have
strong
strong
communication
communication
skills.
skills.
and need to be patient with students. You don't have to be an expert in every subject, but
Give
give
you
you
some
some
tips
tips to improve your teaching methods.
for you to
I will have
know
time
more.
to study lab. Since I have discovered that I have presentation skills and the salary is much better than that of a teacher. Thanks.
Ok, y aquí está el link en donde ustedes pueden revisar las instrucciones, ¿sí? En inglés de español. Está abierto desde el día de ayer, 7 de abril, hasta el 20. Por favor, tenemos 13 días para cumplir con esta actividad, con la tarea número 1. Ok, thank you guys. That's all for today. See you on Friday. Nos vemos el día viernes. Ok, thank you. Bye.